I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring your ass.
These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
Okay, we got the sports dad, Judd Zulgad, in the house. Phil Mackey here. It's the morning of Western Conference Finals, Game 2. Tonight's going to be rocking. They've got a big block party planned downtown Minneapolis. The TNT crew. Charles Barkley has just been spotted all over. He was at Red Cow yesterday.
Taking pictures and like selfies or whatever.
Are these like Photoshop? He was at the downtown Target apparently last night.
I think they're all real.
It's hilarious.
I think they're all. At first I thought that they were fake, but I've seen enough now. I think they're real. And what's incredible is he's consuming some really top quality food. But here's my question: like, you look like he's Red Cow for lunch. I'm not sure about you, but if I go Red Cow for lunch, I don't think I can do Hoyt's for dinner.
Was he at Hoyt's
last night? So
he was at Hoyt's last night. I think he was at Manny's a couple nights ago.
He was, but
rabbit during the day, or a cow during the day.
Cow
Red
during
cow.
The day. Yes, but that's my point. Like, if I do if I do a burger and things for lunch, right? I'm probably gonna very light dinner.
Yeah, well, you could get like a salmon Caesar for dinner at JD Hoyt's, or like some blackened Cajun catfish or something.
He's Buddy Bowl all the way.
Oh yeah, he's for sure Buddy Bowl because he's an Auburn guy, right? Yeah. So he's like oh yeah, so he's down there. That's Buddy Bowl territory for sure.
Oh, he's Buddy Bowl all the way.
So I love how he's been bashing the Wolves for like 2 or 3 years. You can't play with two bigs, and then he's howling on TV. Now he's back to the Mavericks.
Yes.
But he's downtown. So we just figured let's jump on here. We've done these a couple times where they play tonight. So, there's not like a ton of shelf life for a Flagrant Howls episode, but it's fun talking about this team. Chris Finch said some interesting things yesterday. We got some Feedback Friday stuff. So we're going to hit you with a little Friday morning episode and send you on your way for Game 2 tonight. Let's start here. Chris Finch, not happy with Game 1. He talked about how it's the most disappointed he's been in their effort, their energy in a long time. So as proud as he was after Game 6, Game 2 and Game 6 in the Denver series, he said, basically told the team, it's been weeks since I've been this disappointed in my basketball child, you guys.
Yes.
And the quote that's been gaining steam nationally is Chris Finch said, the Western Conference Finals started. Not sure our guys got the memo. They did today. Yes. During a spirited film session. What did you make of that?
So, first of all, I love this. Second of all, this is potentially a hot take. I think Chris Finch has taken the Game 1 loss by the Wolves and potentially turned it into a bigger positive than a win might have been, and here's why. First of all, it's a close game. If you get, it's my opinion that most coaches, if you get blown out, especially in the playoffs, it's hard to rip your team because they're already vulnerable. Like if you get, like the Wolves did. Did you notice when they got drilled by the Nuggets, he never ripped into them?
Because, like Game 3, right?
Yeah, because they're vulnerable, because they know they sucked and they were awful and they got done. And the scoreboard basically was the pie in your face. This is a game that the Wolves could have won. They lost by 3 points. But when you look at the box score, they played just bad enough for things that are easy to nitpick and to go after. And I actually think that Chris Finch is doing a potentially genius job of taking what could have been just a negative and flipping it into this is my chance to pounce on these guys and remind them they're not nearly as good as they think.
Yeah.
So I love this.
He could have gone one of two directions. Well, actually, the players went in one of the directions. I mean, Anthony Edwards and Karl-Anthony Towns, led by Anthony Edwards, was saying, "Yeah, we were tired coming off that Denver series. Just our energy wasn't there. We were tired."
Yes.
And you could have definitely gone down the list of excuses or just like logical reasons. And I'll give you the stat that I gave Kyle on yesterday's episode, because there is a long-standing trend that if you finish a 7-game grueling series and then you're this deep in the playoffs, game one is almost impossible to win. So like those are viable reasons for why the Timberwolves didn't win game one. But Chris Finch said, I'm not going to go down that path. I'm not giving them the out. To your point, it's almost like when they lost game 82 to the Suns and then they get the Suns in a 7-game series, the whole week he got to humble them the entire week saying, listen, man, you guys got your asses kicked 3 times by this team. We've got some adjustments, but you have to look inward, look into your basketball soul. So it in a different way, like they didn't get smoked by the Mavericks, but it felt like a really good thing to galvanize around if you're the coaching staff that they got beat in game one.
And if you recall, when they got beat by the Suns in game 82, he spent the whole time publicly basically sort of fine with it. Like it was a very odd calm, because I think he knew if I drill him now, I'm going to make him uptight. I actually think if they had lost game one by 20, he probably goes with some version of the we were pretty tired. Like it showed. But I think the score, the closeness, the fact that the Wolves led this game late gives him the perfect ammo, because when you look at this game, there's a lot of things that can be fixed, and if you're a player, I think if you're a Wolves player, you're thinking we were close here. It's not like we got blown out. And so I think what Finch is saying is this is my perfect time to pounce and to say and to publicly say, the Western Conference Finals started. I guess they didn't get the memo yet. It's absolutely, to me, a genius tactical move. And when I say that the opportunity to do this might be more valuable than a win, yes, a win would have been great. But think about this. These series are all pretty long, and the playoffs are very long, and it's all a pendulum thing. It's all, and so what can you do to take this loss and turn it into a positive? What you can do now is say, hey, when you guys don't play your best, when we don't play the right coverages, when we get away from the game plan, you see what happens. So I actually think, in retrospect now, going back and not just watching that game, but hearing his comments, I think it glues together very nicely to send a message going into tonight's game that if you don't listen to what I want, what we want, then this is what's going to be the result. And this is the first time, Finchy can be salty, Phil, but this is the first time I think in the playoffs that he's gone down this path. He's been pretty good backing off and or just being positive. So this is, you can't drill them every time. Players tune that crap out, but you can drill them every once in a while. And I think this is a perfect place for a jab.
Yeah. And there haven't been, to the Wolves' credit, there haven't been that many opportunities to really light them up, because
but the
they swept
blowouts
the Suns
against Denver are intriguing. Games 4 and 5, like as a fan, you're thinking, what the bleep is going on?
Yeah.
Or no, games 3, 4, and then 5.
Yeah.
And I don't remember him going, he wasn't happy, but I don't remember anything publicly even approaching this.
Yeah, no, and then to add to it, we talked about this on yesterday's Flagrant House, but I don't think you and I have talked about this. Credit to emailer Dan Kraft for sniffing this out on one of the ESPN shows. So according to ESPN stats and information, since the 2011 NBA Conference Finals, teams coming off a Game 7 win in the semifinal round, the second round, teams coming off a Game 7 win are now 0-14 in the ensuing Game 1. We're not counting the times where two teams come off a Game 7. It's one team comes off a Game 7 win, and the other team doesn't play a Game 7. Those teams are 0-14 in Game 1, going back to 2011.
Wow.
Which is insane. So the next logical question is, okay, well, how many of those teams then came back after falling behind 1-0? And the data is not that promising for Timberwolves fans. Those teams are 2-10. So there's the reason that math doesn't add up to the 0-14 is because the Wolves are still in question, and the Pacers won a Game 7 and then lost Game 1.
Okay.
So they are still in question. But of the other 12 teams going back to 2011 that fell behind 1-0 after winning a Game 7 in the second round, they are 2-10 in the series that followed, the conference finals. Now, many of those losses were against like the Dynasty Warriors over the past 12, 13 years, or LeBron's Heat or LeBron's Cavaliers. I was looking some of this up. So but I think on one hand, you don't want to be down 1-0 to two of the best offensive players in the world. It's not a great position to be in. On the other hand, losing game one was historically inevitable after climbing that 7-game mountain against Denver.
That's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, I wish I would have known that going into game one, because then I would have been like, oh, they're losing. Like, they're going to lose. So everybody calm down.
You would think that, like, of the 14, like, let's just say 3 of them would have ridden the momentum of the game 7 high into a win in game one. That is absolutely interesting.
I think what happens, though, is, I used to be a big NASCAR fan back in the mid to late 90s, and at the end of these races, sometimes you are you're trying to decide, should I skip going in for new tires and skip going in for gas and just risk it? Just literally empty the entire gas tank around turn 4 at the Daytona 500. I think a game 7 in the playoffs, you're playing more minutes. Your stars are exerting more effort. Right. The other team is also, it's like both teams are exerting more effort than they have the entire season. And it's just exhausting if you do it right, and especially if it's a close game, or in the Wolves' case, you're down by 20 on the road in altitude, defending champions. And this all sounds like excuse making, but it's more explaining why these teams have such a hard time in game one. But okay, that's game one. Right. 48 hours off. Game one and the Denver series don't matter anymore. You now need to beat this Mavericks team 4 times in the next 2 weeks. You got to figure it out.
Who, in your opinion, guards Kyrie in game 2?
So that's what's really interesting.
I don't think it's Ant again.
I think Ant's going to be on him sometimes.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You can't have Ant do like every minute I'm out there. It's like, okay.
Right.
Maybe pick him up to start the game like he did a couple times on Jamal Murray, just to set a tone and say, hey, I'm here, I'm competing, and then move him off. Here's what I would say.
Right.
If Anthony Edwards is out there with Mike Conley, I do think, because you want Jaden McDaniels pestering Luka Doncic. So really, like, if Anthony Edwards and Mike Conley are out there, you probably need Ant to be on Kyrie Irving for X number of minutes. But every waking second that Nickeil Alexander-Walker is out there, I want him on Kyrie Irving if I'm Chris Finch. I mean, I feel like Nickeil Alexander-Walker's existence in this series is to pester Kyrie Irving. But the other conundrum here is, like, Mike Conley, even not at 100%, is such a great facilitator of the offense and getting the different actions to work the way that they're supposed to.
And Nah is struggling right now, so like you got to get him to get a shot back.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Yeah, Nickeil is not nearly as good of a floor general. He has grown a lot in that area, and he's cold from the 3-point line, which means he's probably going to hit 3 of them tonight because he's due to hit some. But you got to play that balance of Nickeil's defensive prowess is really important with these 2 superstar offensive players. But you can't just like take Conley off the floor for long stretches because he organizes things. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And by the way, like, Luka, unbothered seemingly by Jaden McDaniels throughout the duration of that game, especially in the second half. So are there strategic things the Wolves can do to just make Luka a little more uncomfortable? He's still going to get his 27, 30, or 35 or whatever, right. But can you just make it a little harder in the second half?
Kyrie and Doncic in game one combined for 63 points. I'm not sure about you. I think taking Kyrie away is more important. So I think if you sort of go a little bit of Joker on Doncic and just say he's going to get his, and we're not going to give him his points, but I think more important than the fact that individually Kyrie got 30 and Luka got 33. I think you've got to take one of them away more, and I would prefer Kyrie because I feel like he's the guy that sort of has the ability to, at least in the first half in game one, he's the one that just came at you and he got to the rim a lot. And there were things I saw there that I'm sure should not be as easy as they looked, no matter how good he is.
Yeah. So I think that, and I'm not like a basketball X's and O's tactician here, but I think what you could start doing is you could start blitzing him off screens more often. If he's going to call for a screen, can you run a quick double at him so that the ball gets out of his hands? And now you're in rotation. On the Luka front, what was interesting is they sort of decided when he called for screens, they decided with Jaden to sort of shadow him over the top. So like once he picks up the screen, Jaden McDaniels is kind of fighting him from behind and leading him into Rudy, which for a lot of other teams like Jamal Murray, like that's the right strategy is, okay, I'm going to guide you. I can block a shot from behind if I'm Jaden McDaniels, and I'll just guide you into Rudy, and then he will make your life difficult. But Luka is so great at making those little drop passes. I mean, how many little like lobs and drop passes did he make?
Yes.
So the other strategy the Wolves could implement is going underneath screens and just letting him shoot off of screens if he calls for a screen. He's only shooting like 30% from three-point range over these playoffs. Now, in the regular season, he shot 38% on 11 attempts per game. So if like that's what's hard about this is ordinarily you wouldn't want to go underneath the screen of a guy who shoots 38% from three on a volume of 11 shots per game because he's just going to hit a ton of threes and dagger you. But the way that he was able to probe and get in the lane and make passes for automatic dunks or get his own little floaters from like 10 feet, I would probably gamble and say, you know what, man, if you want to shoot the lights out, I guess we can live and die with that, but we can't give up 62 points in the paint again.
Right.
So, I don't know. We'll see what happens tonight. Let's get to some we got some Feedback Friday questions here before we go in about 5 or 10 minutes. And a shout out to our friends at EcoFun as well. So EcoFun has 2 locations in the Twin Cities area, Forest Lake and Burnsville. And EcoFun Motorsports is your summertime fun headquarters, as you can see on the YouTube channel. Endless amounts of scooters, motorcycles, ATVs, side-by-sides, electronic bikes, top premier brands like Yamaha, Kawasaki, Bentelli. For all your summertime fun on the pavement and on the water at the Forest Lake location, they've got a fully stocked line of 2024 Kawasaki and Yamaha watercraft that you can get yourself into. That's the Forest Lake location for the watercraft. You can hit either location for the pavement craft, as I will call them, Forest Lake and Burnsville. EcoFunMotorsports.com. Tell them Score North sent you. EcoFunMotorsports.com. Okay, let's see here. Feedback. Brad in Vadnais Heights says, is Anthony Edwards okay physically? He hasn't shot or played the same since he landed hard on his tailbone in that Game 6 win over Denver.
I think I think he's banged up. I think he is probably incredibly tired. I mean, he's 22, so he's got youth on his side. But if you think about the amount of basketball he's playing now, and hell, that a lot of these guys are playing, it's unprecedented. Keep in mind too, to his credit, Ant doesn't take games off. And yeah. I don't mean mentally, I mean literally, he doesn't take games off. So do I think that Ant is anywhere near 100%? Zero chance. I don't know if I personally have noticed like a drop off since the tailbone thing, which wouldn't shock me. But I mean, he definitely is banged up. Like you look at the amount of times he gets up slowly, right? You look at the amount of times he gets banged up. So I would say that if he looks like he's tuckered or he looks like he's slowed a bit, it's because he definitely is.
Yeah, and he's not really complaining about it. It's funny, like Jamal Murray at every turn in the last series. Oh, my elbow, my this, my that, like my calf. Like, okay, yeah. I mean, Anthony Edwards has had, any number of different things too. And Karl-Anthony Towns' knee is not 100%. I mean, we're playing late May basketball, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's fair to say he's not 100%. I don't know that that's the reason why he hasn't necessarily played or shot well the last 2 games, but yeah, something to keep an eye on going into game 2. I believe it's pronounced Pesach Weinberg, Pesach Weinberg. Longtime listener here, been with you guys since the 1500 ESPN radio show days. Just wondering if you tried to hook up with any podcasters from the Dallas market to try previewing this series. Just thought it'd be interesting to get some insight from the other team's perspective. So whether it's Purple Daily or Flagrant Howls, we have sort of seen we kind of see the numbers, and generally the audience doesn't love preview content or opposing market. We used to do on Purple Daily a weekly, bring an opposing beat writer in to talk about the team on Thursdays or whatever. And it was consistently the least popular thing that we did because, I don't know, it's preview content about the opposing team. I'm sure some of you would enjoy that if there are entertaining people in the Dallas market, or if they get to the finals, the Boston market, or I think for Indianapolis, we probably just bring our guy Grady on because he's an Indianapolis native, probably still keeps close tabs on the team. But
that'd be tough for him.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still he grew up a fan for sure. I don't know if he still is a fan or he definitely rides with the Wolves now, but I don't know. If that's something overwhelmingly that you guys would enjoy going into if they get to the next round, then we could potentially do that. Rick Barry, the legendary Rick Barry, or just
underhanded free throws? Rick Barry?
Well,
great player. Golden State Warriors. Woo.
Says, who was better, prime Kevin Garnett or prime Tim Duncan?
Oh, my God. I'm going to having seen them both play in the era, highly controversial take. I'm going to say prime Tim Duncan.
So, Duncan has more accolades, more
just not as flashy.
MVPs. But. Yeah, the big fundamental. So, I'm very biased here. I think Kevin Garnett was the more overall dynamic, talented player. Duncan was, KG was born into a poverty franchise. Flip Saunders was there to kind of save the day, but he was born into this still relatively expansion franchise that had won nothing before. Mm-hmm. Even some of the Glenn Taylor stuff, the bumbling around with the Joe Smith contract, the front office whiffing on a bunch of chances to put a secondary superstar next to KG after Marbury left. There's just a lot of poverty things there in the late 90s, early 2000s. Meanwhile, Tim Duncan was born into a royal family of basketball. Greg Popovich, David Robinson was still there. The Spurs were one of the best teams in the Western Conference throughout the 90s. Robinson gets hurt for 1 year. They luck box their way into Tim Duncan. So he's just he didn't get drafted by some crappy franchise. Mm-hmm. I think if you were to have taken KG, put him on those Spurs teams, he gets Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard toward the end of his career, right? KG probably has more than one championship.
Oh, probably, yeah. But just for as dynamic as KG could be, I think because Duncan, as far as a personality went, was really, really boring. We don't talk about it much. And if he had played for the Knicks, clearly that also would have been different.
Yeah.
But I would probably say Tim. And the thing too is coming out of Wake. KG, it's sort of a weird thing because he came out of high school. I think he was at the time the first player since something like 1973.
Moses Malone, maybe?
Yeah. They had changed that rule to come out of high school and play. But he literally had to learn on the job. Duncan came in a polished product. So it's a tough call. But I would personally say Tim Duncan.
Yeah. KG was more entertaining for sure.
Oh, it's not even. Tim Duncan, I think, was purposely a bore ass.
Yeah. And it's funny now seeing, I saw him on Richard Jefferson's podcast, the Richard and Larry podcast, where he's sitting next to the Larry O'Brien trophy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got
Tim Duncan's
the great
hair.
Yeah, I think there was a lot there. I think he wasn't going to show any of it. And in San Antonio, I don't know that people really cared.
Yeah. Well, they wanted championships, and they got championships.
They got them.
And then Robbie B says, stupid basketball question off of the Cat goaltending situation in game 1. Why is the offensive goaltending rule in place in the first place? Why is it even a rule? I understand the defensive side of it, but the offensive side doesn't make sense to me because the cylinder sounds like a ball that's going to go in, right? A ball in the cylinder is going to go in. So why does it matter if it's a putback or not? This might be the dumbest question ever for a guy trying to learn basketball.
No,
but it sounds like a nonsense rule.
No. It's a great point. And I believe FIBA doesn't have it.
Yeah. I found the FIBA rule here, by the way. So FIBA is once the ball strikes the rim, any player on either team can play the ball. They can swat it. They can tap it. They can put it back in.
Interesting. Okay.
obviously in American college basketball and the NBA, there is essentially a made up hypothetical cylinder that goes up to the rafters of the arena.
Yep.
And the NBA put out the propaganda machine of like, here's our Hawkeye technology.
Well, did you see though? So they're saying if any portion of the ball is in, like a very small portion was left, the whole ball was not there. Most of it was out of the cylinder, and there was a fraction of the ball inside. And they said if there's any fraction of the ball inside there, so basically the NBA is saying even if the shot is not going to
coming
go,
off,
because it's coming off, that is not a stupid question. It's a great question, and it is a dumb rule.
It would be major advantage Timberwolves with Rudy Gobert and Karl, like just their size, and Anthony Edwards and how high he can jump. If they went to the FIBA version of this rule, which is once it hits the rim, you can knock it off. Like, think about the shots that like a ball goes off the rim,
defensively,
off the backboard.
Right.
Rudy comes up, swats that thing out of there.
Yeah.
So, Robbie B., as you learn basketball, this is a safe space for your not so dumb questions.
It's a fantastic. I love this point.
Yeah. So we'll mix in some more Feedback Friday probably next week if they are still alive here. We'll see what the landscape looks like next week. But Game 2 tonight, Target Center. You and I will be live on the Score North YouTube channel from inside Target Center. Win or lose, we'll either be your therapy as the Wolves dig out of a hole, or we will celebrate the Wolves tying the series at 1. I think the atmosphere is going to be crazy tonight, and I look forward to taking in the vibes.
Yeah, I think they're going to be tied at 1 late tonight. Don't you?
Here's a hot take. I think they are more likely to win by like 18 or 20 than lose. I think they're more likely to come out with their full version, their full punch, and even the series in a blowout fashion than fall behind 2-0.
Down 3-2. You believed. Who am I to doubt you?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm not just like blindly believing here. Like, this team is awesome. This team is better than the Mavericks. This team, I think, has much more left from their Game 1 performance than the Mavericks do. Now, the Mavericks were cold from three-point land, and that is something to keep an eye on.
Right.
Like, they're at some point, they're probably going to hit 15 threes in a game. So we'll see. But, this is Flagrant Howls. That's the sports dad, Judd Zulgad. I am Phil Mackey. This is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.